So, you've been thrown into the 11th century. Knights, crusades, castles, mud everywhere, the whole thing. Honestly impressive for about 3 days. On the 4th day, an army shows up outside the city walls. Thousands of soldiers, swords, spears, siege weapons. And nobody, not a single person, knows what gunpowder is, except you. You need a tank. Before you touch anything, let's figure out what a tank actually is at its core. Most people picture a tank as this complicated machine full of engines, electronics, thermal imaging, and computer targeting. But strip all of that away. What's left? A tank is 3 things. Something that moves, something that protects the people inside, and something that shoots at the enemy. That's it. Mobility, protection, firepower. In the 11th century, there are no engines, but there are horses and wheels. No factory-made armor, but there are blacksmiths who work iron every single day. No cannons, but you know something that nobody within several thousand kilometers knows. You know the recipe for gunpowder. Gunpowder is a mixture of 3 substances: saltpeter, charcoal, sulfur. Charcoal everyone knows. Just burn wood without oxygen and you get pure carbon. In the 11th century, blacksmiths do this every day. Sulfur is a yellow mineral found naturally near volcanoes and hot springs. In the Middle Ages, it was actively mined and traded across all of Europe. Used in medicine, for disinfection, for treating fabrics, sulfur is available at any medieval market. But saltpeter is more interesting, much more interesting. Saltpeter is potassium nitrate. Sounds like something from a modern laboratory, but it actually forms on its own in nature. Everywhere there is decomposing organic matter and certain bacteria. In the soil, under manure piles, in old stables, in cellars where organic material is stored, in caves full of bats. Medieval people noticed that white crystals sometimes formed on the walls of old stables and cellars. They called it salt of the earth and had no idea what to do with it. You do. You scrape the white crust off the walls of an old stable, dissolve it in water, filter it through cloth to remove the dirt, boil off the water. White crystals remain. That's saltpeter. If there aren't enough crystals, you can speed up the process. You dig a large pit, fill it with manure, straw, organic waste. Pour urine over it. Urine contains urea, which bacteria convert into nitrogen compounds. Wait a few weeks. The bacteria work, chemical reactions happen, saltpeter accumulates in the soil at the bottom, wash it out with water, boil off the liquid, collect the crystals. This is exactly how saltpeter was produced in Europe once gunpowder finally arrived there. Specialist workers called saltpeter men traveled between cities collecting the contents of cesspits. It was an important government profession. In some countries, the state had the legal right to confiscate the contents of any cesspit for gunpowder production. The Middle Ages were an aromatic time. Now, why does gunpowder actually explode? Because understanding this is the difference between making a weapon and making a very loud mistake. Combustion is a chemical reaction between fuel and oxygen. Normally, oxygen comes from the air. That's why fire burns slowly. Oxygen molecules from the air have to gradually reach the fuel. But saltpeter contains oxygen inside itself, right inside its own molecule. When you heat saltpeter, it breaks apart and releases all that oxygen at once. Instantly, an enormous amount of oxygen appears in one place at one moment. Charcoal and sulfur are the fuel. When all that oxygen from the saltpeter crashes into the fuel simultaneously, the combustion reaction happens not gradually, but in thousandths of a second. All the solid material instantly becomes superheated gases, with a volume roughly 1,000 times greater than the original powder. That expansion, solid material becoming gas 1,000 times larger in a fraction of a second, that is the explosion. Not the fire, not the heat. The rapid expansion of gases creates the pressure that destroys everything around it. The proportions matter. Too much charcoal. The mixture burns slowly like a smoky campfire. Too little, not enough fuel, and most of the oxygen escapes uselessly. The optimal formula is roughly 75% saltpeter, 15% charcoal, 10% sulfur. Chinese alchemists found these proportions through trial and error centuries before you. You just already know the right answer. Now you need to direct the explosion, because an explosion in all directions at once is just destruction. An explosion directed in one direction is a weapon. The principle of a cannon is simple to the point of genius. You take a tube. One end sealed, the other end open. You put gunpowder and a heavy ball inside the tube. You ignite the gunpowder through a small hole in the sealed end. The gunpowder explodes. Gases expand. Backward they cannot go. The sealed end blocks them. Forward they can go. There's the ball. The pressure of the expanding gases pushes the ball forward with enormous force. The ball flies out of the open end. This is why the shape matters. A long tube is better than a short one. The gases push on the ball along the entire length of the barrel, accelerating it continuously until it exits. The longer the barrel, the faster the ball at the exit, up to a point. If the barrel is too long, the gases cool and pressure drops before the ball exits. Now, what do you make the tube from? This is the main engineering problem. The explosion creates enormous pressure inside. If the walls of the tube cannot hold it, the whole thing ruptures, along with whoever is standing nearby. Iron in the 11th century is made by forging. A blacksmith hammers red-hot metal and shapes it. But forged iron is porous and uneven. There can be invisible cracks and voids inside. Under the pressure of an explosion, a forged iron tube ruptures unpredictably. Bronze is better. Bronze is an alloy of copper and tin. When bronze is cast into a mold, it fills every millimeter of the space, cools evenly, and produces a dense, uniform structure without voids. Bronze holds pressure much better than forged iron. This is why the first real cannons in Europe, in the 14th century, were made from bronze. In the 11th and 12th centuries, bronze exists and is actively used for bells, statues, decorations. Foundry workers who know how to cast bronze are present in every major city. You go to the foundry worker and explain that you need a thick-walled bronze tube sealed at one end with a small hole. He has no idea why. You don't explain. Now, protection. And here there's something non-obvious. When an arrow or a stone flies at you, it carries kinetic energy, the energy of motion. That energy has to go somewhere when the projectile stops. A flat iron plate absorbs the impact directly. All the energy pushes on one point. If the pressure exceeds the strength of the metal, the plate gets punched through. A curved plate works differently. The projectile strikes the surface at an angle and slides sideways. Instead of all the energy going straight inward, most of it goes into deflecting the projectile sideways. This is like the difference between punching through a wall versus knocking a door open. Different tasks requiring different amounts of force. This is exactly why Knight's armor is always rounded, exactly why modern tanks have angled armor at 60 to 70 degrees from vertical. The projectile ricochets. The angle of the armor matters more than its thickness. You build a wooden frame, roughly the size of a small room, large enough for 2 horses and 2 people inside. You cover it with curved iron plates set at an angle. Everywhere, floor, walls, ceiling. You leave narrow slits for visibility and for the cannon barrel. You cut the slits at an angle, narrow on the outside, wider on the inside, so you can see and shoot outward, but an arrow cannot get inside without an impossible angle. Now mobility. And here is the main engineering challenge. Horses outside don't work, they'll be killed first. The horses have to be inside, protected by the armor. Horses inside walk in a circle, like horses turning a millstone. This is a completely familiar sight in the 11th century. Horse-powered mills stood everywhere. Their circular motion needs to be converted into the forward motion of the wheels. For this, you need gears. And here's what's important to understand about gears. They don't create force. They redistribute it. A small gear turning a large gear. The large gear turns slower, but with much greater force. That's exactly what you need. Your vehicle is very heavy and the horses need mechanical assistance to get it moving from a standstill. Gears in the 11th century are completely standard technology. Water mills, windmills, lifting mechanisms, and castles. Everything ran on gears. Any carpenter knew how to make them. Steering is even simpler. 2 drive systems, left and right. Want to turn left? Disconnect the left drive, the right wheels move forward, the left wheels stand still, the vehicle pivots left. Want to go right? Reverse it. To disconnect the drive, you just need a simple wooden lever that disengages the gears. The speed will be slow, 2 to 3 kilometers per hour, but continuous, without stopping, without horses outside dying from arrows. But here is one problem nobody thinks about in advance. Horses produce enormous amounts of body heat. 2 horses inside a sealed iron box, and iron conducts heat very well, is a furnace. Within a few minutes of operation, the temperature inside becomes unbearable. The horses overheat, the crew overheats. The solution is ventilation. Narrow angled slits cut into the upper part of the body. Air circulates, arrows cannot pass through, and short operational bursts. Move, attack, stop, ventilate, cool down. This is exactly how the first real tanks worked in World War I. They overheated constantly, and crews regularly had to stop to cool down. History repeats itself. Here's the fact that will keep you up at night. In 1335, 2 centuries after your time but still the Middle Ages, a military engineer named Guido da Vigevano drew detailed plans for a wheeled armored vehicle powered by sails on top, a medieval wind-powered tank. It was never built, but the design existed, and in 1487, Leonardo da Vinci drew his famous tank design, a circular armored hull, cannons pointing in all directions, men inside cranking a mechanism. Historians studied the drawing for centuries and found one strange error. The gears were drawn backwards so the vehicle couldn't actually move. Some historians are convinced Leonardo did this deliberately, so that if the design was stolen, the thief would build something completely useless. A Renaissance genius deliberately broke his own tank to make sure nobody could steal it. The idea was real. The materials existed. It just needed someone who knew how to put the right pieces together. That someone is you. So here's what you've built. A bronze cannon loaded with gunpowder you made from a manure pit and sulfur from the market. Iron armor on a wooden frame set at angles so arrows slide off. 2 horses inside connected to the wheels through gears. Steering levers for turning. Slow, heavy, smells of gunpowder and horses. But it moves, and it shoots. You roll out through the city gates toward the army. The knights watch. They've seen siege towers, catapults, everything the Middle Ages invented, but they've never seen anything like this. An iron box moving on its own. No horses visible outside, no men pushing. Then a sound comes out of it that none of them have ever heard before. Thunder. On a clear day, a stone cannonball travels 200 meters and turns a siege tower into splinters. The army turns around and leaves. A knight standing on the wall next to you stares at the retreating army for a long time, then looks at you. Where did you learn this? You think for a moment. I read a lot.